what tends to get lost in that, or overlooked, I should say, is there's not a whole lot of conversation or education on what I look at as the human side. So behavior, psychology, emotions, and I've never met anybody that says that money's not emotional. But for some reason, if you go out and you look at financial knowledge, financial information, if you want to get better with money, you can go ChatGPT, Google, wherever you want to go. You're going to get hit in the face with all of the number and technical aspect. There's just not a whole lot of information around. Maybe if you're listening, you'd be shocked at how many people come up to me afterwards and go, I've got this son and he's not going to get the same amount. How should I do it? Or how can we start conducting these meetings? Or you mentioned that example of the lake house. We're in that. I mean, people come up and they're like, no one's told us about this before.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Financial Puzzle Playbook with your host, Jim Sumter. I'm RJ Malik, producer of this podcast. And of course, Jim, the heart of your podcast is always the 6 puzzle piece playbook. So you've got a guest. I see that. Brendan is back, which is great. Why don't you tell us what you and Brendan are going to be talking about on this podcast?
Yeah, so thanks, RJ. So we have Brendan Frazier back again for another episode. We had you a couple episodes ago, and then we had you back last year. So you're a resource to me with my firm, CMC Financial. You're the Chief Behavioral Officer at RFG Advisory. So for someone new to this show, maybe just take a couple of seconds. What is that? What do you actually do? Yeah. And then we'll kind of go from there on a topic that I think is pretty timely, where we're talking about families and family meetings.
So for those that are regular listeners, they that have already heard this before, I apologize.
That's okay.
You can go ahead and fast forward through. No. The joke that I always make is that being a chief behavioral officer is really, really fun. It's great and it's cool from the standpoint that we're pioneering the role in the industry. Right. Like we see where the industry is going. We think this is going to be the future. And so we're pioneering the role. The downside of the drawback is that nobody knows what I do, including my mom. Right? So people ask her, what does he do? She's like, I don't know, which is fair, right? It's not like saying, oh, he's an attorney. So the best way I know to explain it is for history. When we think about money and finances, a lot of the focus and the knowledge and the education that's out there tends to center around the numbers and the dollar signs and calculations and spreadsheets, the logical, technical side of things, which it should, right? That's pretty important. You want to know, you need to know the rate of return that you're getting on your money, and we want to know how to spend it in the best ways. But what tends to get lost in that, or overlooked, I should say, is there's not a whole lot of conversation or education on what I look at as the human side. So behavior, psychology, emotions, and I've never met anybody that says that money's not emotional. But for some reason, if you go out and you look at financial knowledge, financial information, if you want to get better with money, you can go ChatGPT, Google, wherever you want to go. You're going to get hit in the face with all of the number and technical aspect. There's just not a whole lot of information around the human side, which most people would say is probably just as important, right? It's always there, whether we recognize it or not. And so as the chief behavioral officer, one of my jobs is to try to help spread the message, create some awareness, put out education and content to make it a more regular part of the conversation so that we can be aware of it when we're making financial decisions.
Right. So that's really cool. And that's how you've been able to be a resource for us, is providing us with a lot of these resources. We talked in a couple episodes ago about, you made the analogy, you said, okay, if you look back 10 years, where was your life 10 years ago? If you look back 20 years ago, I'll tell you, this topic that I'm about to discuss is something that we really did. I've been an advisor for 28 years. I've been a certified financial planner for over 20. Okay. That's what created this whole puzzle playbook, is the areas of financial planning. Mm-hmm. We never really talked about the behavioral side, the emotional side. How do you, talk to family members, things like that, about the topic of money? Mm-hmm. When I sit down with clients, they're generally, I'm making a very general statement, one of two ways. Mm-hmm. Either they're fine with their family knowing everything, mm-hmm. or they want their family to know nothing. It's like they'll figure it out when they read the will. Yeah. And that is if I don't spend every dime of it first.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So there is this topic and this concept of a family meeting. Mm-hmm. of being able to let my kids, let my heirs know what I'm thinking about, what is important to me, what's important to me and mom. That's what happens a lot of times. Not necessarily to the dollar, this is what you're going to inherit, because we don't want, a child's retirement plan to be based off mom and dad dying,
right?
So they don't necessarily need to know every dime. Now, some do, but, some will tell. But others are like, we want them to know at least the values that we have. We want them to know the core beliefs that we have. We want them to know why we did what we did. We talked a lot about why in the last time you and I sat down. And we want our kids to understand this is what we did, and whatever's left is going to go to you, and this is why we did the things that we did. So there's this concept of this family meeting. And remind me, do you have siblings?
Yeah, two younger sisters.
Okay. Are you the favorite for your parents?
I mean, obviously.
Yeah. Well, so I'm the oldest as well, and I'm obviously the favorite. Yeah. As I remind my mom sometimes, I said, you thought that, when I was in high school that maybe I was, going to turn out a certain way. And then my sisters came along, and all of a sudden I was perfect because of everything that I did. And so, that's probably the way you were too,
Absolutely.
Right? Because you have two younger sisters,
that's
right?
Exactly right.
And so thank God for my sister so-and-so and so-and-so, because it made me look really, really good.
Yeah.
So every family that has more than one sibling, and then there's a lot of families who are blended, okay?
Yep.
This is where I want to touch on kind of both sides of this whole topic. And we're going to kind of drill down and kind of get into this. But this idea of a family meeting, when did it really start happening? Was it when people from an emotional side wanted to pass down core values, or has it always been this way? We just never really talked about it before. Has it always been for the ultra high wealthy and not really for middle America? What are your thoughts on some of that?
Yeah. So generally speaking, it sort of started, or this concept of a family meeting took off with wealthy families.
Okay.
It had so much money that it was like, hey, we don't want to ruin our kids if we hand them a bunch of money. Right? We're like, hey, if they're going to inherit a bunch, we want to make sure that they understand even just basic financial knowledge. We don't want them inheriting a lot of money and not knowing the basic core tenets of financial success, right? Financial planning, right? So that's part of it. Another part of it was a family. You have a family who, let's say it's a wealthy family. Oftentimes that's related to owning a business or selling a business. Not always, right? But no matter who you are, if you're wealthy, you got there in some way, shape, or form, and you have some core beliefs or attributes or things, values that you believe attributed to that success. And oftentimes that's this like grinding mentality. There's a level of risk that you're willing to take. So the last thing you want is for your hard-earned money to pass down, and then they just go out and blow it because they're spoiled and they didn't earn it, so it's worth less. Right? That's where it sort of started. It starts there, but then what we come to find out, which I think is interesting when you look at the research, is there's a study out there by the Williams Group where they found that when estate plans or legacies go wrong, so when money gets blown, when there's tension in the family, when they go wrong, it very rarely has to do with, do they have the technical estate planning? If we think about that puzzle, their puzzle piece, right? It's very rarely, did they have the documents that they needed? Did they have the structures? Did they have the trustees? Sometimes that's the case. They don't have that. But even in the situations where they had documents, wills and power of attorneys, trustees, all that mapped out, it didn't ensure a successful legacy. There was still tension. There were still issues. The money still got blown. So what they found were that the three common causes of a failed legacy were, number one, a trust and communication breakdown. Number two was a failure to prepare the heirs. And then number three was a misalignment of values. Nowhere in the research did it say lack of documentation and appropriate structures. Again, those are vitally important, right? So let's not overlook that or bypass that. Right. Ultimately, what we've come to find out is that we do a really good job of preparing the assets for our family, saying, "Hey, when I pass away, here's what you're going to get." We put it in wills, we document it. We don't do a good job. Hardly anybody does a good job of preparing the family to receive the assets. And I think the other important note here is that when it comes to legacy, assets aren't just the valuables the things that you own. It's not just the dollars you have in your bank account. Like you said, it's your family lessons, your family stories, and the values that you want to pass down. as well. So as this starts coming to light, it's like, okay, hang on. Those are the three key characteristics of when legacy goes wrong. So then the question naturally becomes, okay, well, the ones that are doing it right, what's happening? And to sum it up as simply as possible, I said earlier, we do a good job of preparing the assets for the family, but not the family for the assets. So how do we do a better job preparing the family for the assets? The families that do it well, they talk openly, they talk frequently, and they talk graciously about money. And it's really that simple. They talk openly, they talk frequently, and they talk graciously. And so the family meeting concept was formed from, okay, having these conversations is really important. Most of us avoid it. Like it's more common to avoid it than it is than not. I get to go around the country and give a presentation on this. I was in Naples on Tuesday. And I mean, you wouldn't be shocked. Maybe if you're listening, you'd be shocked at how many people come up to me afterwards and go, I've got this son and he's not going to get the same amount. How should I do it? Or how can we start conducting these meetings? Or you mentioned that example of the lake house. We're in that. I mean, people come up and they're like, no one's told us about this before. So now it's kind of become my mission to say, hey, we should talk openly, frequently, and graciously. And the family meeting is a pathway or an avenue through which to make that happen.
Right. So one of the things that I've done is I'm talking to a client about this or talking to a couple about this is I said, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll invite the family into our office. We'll bring in dinner, we'll bring in lunch, wherever it is. If we have someone that's a distance, we'll put them on a Zoom, whatever, so that the family can be there with a disinterested third party, which is me.
Right.
Maybe I have an interest, but it's basically a third party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that you can sort of facilitate this meeting.
Yep.
Is that what you're finding that works? What are some options and ways to do that? Is this something you do over the holidays when you're all together? Is this something I'm calling a family meeting? How do you do that?
Yeah. So I think a core tenet of a successful meeting, it's always helpful to have an objective third party.
Okay.
For the reasons that you mentioned, somebody that can guide and facilitate the conversation, but it's also conversations are neutralized. That it diffuses tension when you have an objective third party in the room. It's why I mentioned in the last episode therapy. It's why therapists exist, especially with couples. It's like, hey, we need somebody to sort of help guide or facilitate and diffuse the tension in this conversation. So I think it's always helpful to have that.
Right.
Now, if you're sitting there going, that feels awkward to me, I don't know if I want somebody, then it's better to do it. It's better to do it than not do it, right? So it's not necessary, but I think you get a better outcome. Right. So I'll say that first. How to do it, there's a variety of ways. And it spans the spectrum. Everything from you have certain people and families who go, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to set it up in advance. We're going to put it on the calendar. We're going to have a very structured, formalized agenda of what we're going to be doing, and everyone's going to know about it, right? We all know those people that would do it that way, and that works. It goes all the way to the other side of the spectrum where some people go, are you kidding me? I'm not going to send out an agenda prior to our family getting together, right? And on the other side of the spectrum is there's ways you can do it where you're basically just getting everybody together. And it may just be on a Sunday night when everybody's coming over for dinner. But the key there is it can't be like you can't say, oh, this is going to be like any other night. You have to set the stage. It doesn't have to be formal, right? But you're going to say, hey, we want you guys to come over. We're going to provide dinner. But we're going to be talking about basically what happens when we're gone. And like, we want to get you guys on the same page so you know what's going on. So that when we're gone, it's not that you know exactly what to do and what you're supposed to do. And then in the middle of that, or I guess I'd say in the middle, but another idea, one of my favorites that I've heard is some families like to do it around experiences. One of the examples was they took, it was a family that took their entire family, kids and grandkids, on a 2-week trip to Italy. And on that trip, they found the time they were all together to have the conversation, and it gave them a way to say, hey, and one of the things, as we talk about values, one of the things that's important to us when we look at our money is to use money to go on experiences and spend time together as a family. Right. So it was a way to display in like right there the value. Another example I've heard is a family that every year, sometimes around Thanksgiving, or they'll just pick a day if it doesn't work, they'll all go volunteer together as a family, right? After they volunteer, they come back to somebody's house, they sit down for a little bit, they talk through things, and it's an opportunity to say, hey, volunteering, giving back's really important for us, right? We think that's how we view a good use of money, and they've been there and seen it played out, right? There's a variety of ways to do it. The key is to go in with an intention and do it frequently.
Right.
whatever that looks like.
So what do you talk about when you're having this meeting? In other words, is there a way to say, okay, we're going to lay everything out there, or are you more or less in the beginning talking about here's our values, here's how our will's set up, here's who's getting what, or does it just kind of depend on the family?
Yeah. It depends on the family.
Okay.
I would say start by talking about whatever you most want to talk about and feel comfortable talking about.
Right.
Key things you want to make sure you hit on at a high level. Number one, and in no particular order, but what we find is that oftentimes the heirs, they don't know their role that's going to be expected of them.
Right.
More importantly, more detrimentally, they haven't bought into it.
Right.
So they find out when their parents are gone, like, oh wait, I'm supposed to take care of the lake house. Like I live 3 hours away, and that's a burden on me, right? So make sure that the beneficiaries, the heirs, know their roles and they've bought into it. That they're okay with it, they've accepted it, they're on the same page, and that's what they want to do. That's one. Two is I think a lot of people say that it's important for them to pass down or provide just general financial education, particularly if you're thinking about young kids or grandkids, right? They want to make sure that, hey, if you're going to be receiving this money, we want to make sure that you know some good basic core financial principles of how good money management. And then the last one is, like you said, passing along important like stories from the family, right? Talking about family memories, writing down the ways that you've viewed spending money and making money, what's been successful for you. What if you could pass down one lesson about money to the next generation? What would it be? Just those types of things, right? Like what is it that you want them to remember that'll help them when you're gone?
Right, right. So if I've been in a handful of these family meetings as the facilitator, if you will.
Yep.
What generally happens, and this would be true in my family if it were me and my two siblings and my mom. My father has passed, so if it's my mom and the three of us and we're sitting down, what's going to happen is one of the kids is going to sort of dominate the conversation. They're going to dominate the questions.
Right.
And then you're going to have another sibling that's going to sit there, listen to everything, sometimes take it all in, sometimes get pissed off.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you sort of diffuse that or make sure that doesn't happen in that meeting, and whose role is that? Or does it vary?
Well, first I have to ask, which one are you?
I'm the first one. I'm going to be dominating and asking the questions. However, maybe it's a bad example because I sort of know everything from my family, which probably means I'm going to be the one that's sort of explaining to everybody all what mom's values are, what mom's doing, why mom's doing it, and so on and so forth. Yeah. You're going to have those. Yeah. You're going to have the know-it-all. And I'll readily admit I'm the know-it-all.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My younger sister is going to be the yes person. Okay. Every family has those. You probably have that in your family.
Yeah.
All families have that. Okay. How do you have that conversation? Do you have that ahead of time? Do you kind of warn mom and dad, this is what happens? It could be that mom or dad is that person that dominates everything and the other one's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, first of all, that speaks to the benefit and the importance of having a third party. Like back to what we said earlier. I mean, that's one way to sort of like get it out of the that's the easiest way to do it.
Right. Right.
Because that person is there to facilitate, right? It'll naturally diffuse some of those things, but not entirely. But the most important thing you can do is set the tone beforehand, right? And just whoever, it could be anybody, but just say like right out of the gate, hey, we're not here today to debate, to argue. Like, we can have healthy debates if you want. If you're feeling frustrated, you need to let us know. But we're here to give everybody the space to let themselves be heard. And that means letting people finish, not interrupting. And we're here we're not coming from a place of judgment. We're coming from a place of understanding to all get on the same page. And just you have to try to set the tone that way. And then the key throughout is the person that, the one that tends to nod their head and just agree. That's the one where you've got to go in and you've got to make sure that you have to kind of bring them in and ask like, hey, what do you think about that? Right. They've got thoughts and feelings. They're just not expressing them. Right? So you've got to go tap into them. You may have to check in with the over questioner and talker and just say, hey, remember, we want everybody to be heard fairly and equally. You'll have a chance. What's your sister?
Lisa. Yeah.
Lisa, what do you think? And then Jim. So you're still being heard. Right?
Yeah.
So again, those are more tactically in the conversation, but the way you do it is you have to set the tone out of the gate, right? Just right away and say, hey, this is the intent that we're coming into this meeting with or this conversation with. And it may be different than what we're used to, but it's really important that we create a safe place to talk openly and empathetically with each other because this is a highly emotional topic.
Right. And I will tell you, as a facilitator in a lot of these, that's one of the things that I feel like my role is to make sure that everyone is heard, to make sure that everyone's questions
100%.
Are asked.
Yeah. It's not easy to do, but
It is not. It is not.
yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassidy, the second C in CMC Financial. So Dad sometimes gets on a roll with this podcast and might forget to remind you about a few things. 1, don't forget to like and share this podcast and leave a review. 2, follow CMC Financial on all of the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And 3, go check out the website at cmcfp.com. Okay, back to my dad. He's probably still talking.
Okay, so Brendan, let's jump to a topic that I brought up a second ago, and we'll kind of begin the wrap up with this. Okay, what about blended families? Is that a different dynamic than a family that's maybe not a blended family? And then with that, what is your opinion on it? Do you do this with your children? Do you do this with your children and their spouses? Do you bring in your grandchildren, or does it totally depend? I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, number one, there's research out there on how to do this.
Okay.
Because it's such a thing, especially these days, right? Even, again, in Naples the other day, somebody came up to me afterwards and they're like, we're a blended family. We've seen other blended families where when one spouse, everybody's like, they get remarried, the couple's happier than they've ever been. And then everybody just assumes on both sides, they're like, oh, they're working it out. Like they're going to make sure that we're both taken care of.
Yep.
They've done the work. One spouse passes. Usually what happens is it's the one who has most of the wealth, right?
Yeah.
That side of the family finds out that, oh, wait, they didn't have things set up. So first and foremost, this is a very real thing. Second of all, it is completely different because it's just a completely different dynamic that's at play. But the problems, the challenges, and the issues are still the same. So you still approach it the same way. You still come into it. You talk openly, frequently, and graciously. You set the tone. You set the intention beforehand. To your question about who do you invite? How do you do it? Do you invite just a few people, or do you invite everybody? We hadn't gotten into this, but one of the ways to do this family meeting thing is you can start small and expand. Right. So instead of starting too big, you can iterate over time and go, okay, the first one we have is going to be with this core group. We want to make sure I want to talk to them first, and then we'll expand to everybody else. And then we'll bring in spouses. And then we'll bring in grandkids or their kids, right? So it doesn't have to be all at once. It doesn't have to be everybody at once. You can you can start small and get bigger from there, which I think is the best approach in the blended family scenario. Now, so there's going to be people that are listening going, okay, but who do I include? Who do I not? That's going to be, blended family has such a different dynamic that there's just no boilerplate response to that.
Yeah.
Right? I would be doing somebody a disservice if I was like, well, here's exactly how you do it. But conceptually, you're trying to think through it. The concept to put in place is that you can start smaller and then expand as you have those conversations to get more comfortable with them.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And, as someone who has facilitated these and been in the conversation many, many, many times, I think that's uber important when you're talking about that. So, Brendan, as we wrap up on this concept, final thoughts before we kind of finish.
I think it's one of those deals where you hear it, and I think it's as simple as it sounds, but it's really hard to do.
Right.
Just like getting in shape.
And it's probably procrastinated a lot.
Oh, maybe that. Let's normalize that first. Just know that as I go do this and talk and hear people around the country, most people that I talk to afterwards are like, yeah, we've been meaning to do this. Right? It gets procrastinated a lot. Yeah. The key thing is you got to talk openly, frequently, and graciously. And generally speaking, the batting average isn't 1,000 on this, but most of the time you go into these conversations and you're glad that you did it. There's maybe it doesn't go smoothly, but it may be hard and difficult, but there's still progress. Right? It's still better than avoiding it altogether. I think the worst thing you can do is you mentioned it earlier, and I laugh because I hear it all the time. The worst thing you can do is go with the they figure it out approach. Yeah. They'll figure, not my family. No. They'll figure it out.
Not
That's
us.
where the issues come from.
Yeah.
The majority of the time.
Yeah, that's very true. And you're actually doing an event for CMC in January. And I think this is maybe one of the topics that we'll cover a little more in depth.
Yeah.
And what I would tell listeners is, look, if this is you, if this is your family, if you're my age and you're wondering, have mom and dad done this? Why haven't mom and dad done this? Why hasn't mom done this? Is something that if you have questions about, always reach out to us. So, Brendan, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, follow your research, things like that, you have a tremendous amount of resources. How would they do that?
Yeah, so they're on the RFG Advisory website, rfgadvisory.com. You can find some of my articles there. But probably around this type of content, this stuff is on that website or on the RFG Advisory YouTube page. I've got a video series called Wisdom and Wealth, where every 2 weeks we'll put out some education around a topic on the human side, the behavioral and psychological aspect. So it's one topic every 2 weeks, and then I hang out quite a bit on LinkedIn as well.
Right. And if someone follows me, they can always get to you from my side as well. So. Right. And RJ, I'll just jump in with our contact information. To get us, it's cmcfp.com, or my direct number is 205-510-9074. So a call or a text. We're also on all the socials, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then we have our YouTube channel. And then you can always link back to Brendan. We will put some of Brendan's links and stuff in the show notes on this as well. So I think that's all we have on this topic. This is a huge topic, very, very important topic that, maybe it kind of touched a nerve to some people.
So maybe you'll bring Brendan back to continue this conversation.
Yeah, maybe we will. So, Brendan actually could be a permanent guest. I mean, this could be the Jim and Brendan show.
Yeah. Hang on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's get some feedback first.
Let's get feedback. So
Excellent.
But,
all right.
Yeah, that's all. I think that's all we got on this one.
Appreciate it, guys, and thank you for listening to the Financial Puzzle Playbook podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, because this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you for listening, and for Jim, Brendan, plus everyone at Financial Puzzle Playbook, I'm RJ Malik, and we'll see you at the next podcast.